The diplomatic vessel Gentle Inquiry drifted through the vast emptiness between stars, its crystalline hull catching the distant light of 1,000 suns. Inside, Ambassador Zyr'kai coiled his serpentine body around his hovering meditation sphere, reviewing the data for what must have been the 100th time. Humans. The word itself felt strange against his telepathic consciousness, a harsh collection of sounds that somehow perfectly encapsulated the species it described. They had appeared on the galactic stage merely 300 solar cycles ago, a blink of an eye compared to the collective's 12,000-year history. Yet in that microscopic span of time, they had achieved what should have been impossible. "Ambassador, we are approaching the human colony world designated Earth 7, announced Navigator Prilith, her bioluminescent patches flickering with barely concealed nervousness. "Preliminary scans indicate anomalies."
Zyr'kai uncoiled slightly, his 7 eyes focusing on the forward display. What manner of anomalies?
Their defensive grid does not match any known configuration. The energy signatures are chaotic, unpredictable. Our predictive algorithms cannot establish a baseline pattern. A murmur rippled through the bridge crew. The collective's predictive algorithms had been refined over millennia. They could anticipate the behavior of any known technology with 99.97% accuracy. To encounter something that defied prediction was unprecedented. "Maintain approach vector," Zyr'kai commanded, though he felt the cold tendrils of uncertainty wrapping around his secondary heart. "We are here as diplomats, not warriors. The Council has authorized this mission to establish technological exchange protocols. The humans have expressed interest." Interest. Such a mild word for what the humans had actually expressed. When the collective's initial contact vessel had transmitted the standard greeting package, a comprehensive overview of galactic society, trade networks, and the hierarchy of species, the humans had responded with a single, perplexing message.
"Show us what you've got."
The collective's linguists had debated the meaning for cycles. Was it a challenge, a request, a threat? Ultimately, the Council had decided to interpret it as an invitation to demonstrate collective technology in hopes of establishing a mutually beneficial exchange. The humans possessed something the collective desperately wanted, their faster-than-light propulsion system, which operated on principles that defied every known law of physics. The Gentle Inquiry slid into orbit around Earth 7, and Zyr'kai felt his primary heart stutter at the sight below. The planet was transformed. Where standard colonial development would have created geometric patterns of habitation, efficient, predictable, optimal, the humans had carved something else entirely. Cities sprawled in organic curves, interconnected by networks that pulsed with visible energy. Massive structures jutted from the surface at impossible angles, their purpose utterly unclear. And everywhere there was movement. Vehicles, vessels, objects of every conceivable size and shape, flowing in patterns that seemed random, yet never colliding. "Ambassador," Prilith's voice had dropped to a whisper, "I am detecting 17 distinct power signatures that exceed our maximum theoretical output, and that is merely the surface installations." Before Zyr'kai could respond, the communications array crackled to life. "Collective Vessel Gentle Inquiry, this is Earth 7 traffic control. Please maintain current orbital position and prepare for diplomatic shuttle escort. And, Ambassador, the General says welcome to the show." "The show?" Zyr'kai exchanged uncertain glances with his bridge crew. "Acknowledged, Earth 7 traffic control. We await your escort." 20 minutes later, Zyr'kai found himself aboard a human shuttle that violated at least 6 fundamental principles of spacecraft design. The interior was cramped by collective standards, filled with hard edges and metallic surfaces that seemed almost deliberately uncomfortable. Yet the human pilot, a young female with close-cropped dark hair and an unsettling number of visible teeth, navigated the vessel with casual confidence that bordered on recklessness. "First time to E7?" she asked.
banking sharply around an orbital platform that bristled with antennae. It's something, right? We only finished the main construction 5 years ago. Still working on the fun stuff.
The fun stuff? The pilot grinned, an expression that Zyr'kai had learned to interpret as pleasure, though it still reminded him uncomfortably of a predator baring its fangs. You'll see.
They descended through the atmosphere with stomach-churning speed, the shuttle's hull glowing cherry red, despite what the pilot assured him were perfectly adequate heat shields. When they finally touched down on a landing pad that seemed far too small for the maneuver, Zyr'kai had to take several moments to convince his body that it was not, in fact, dying.
The delegation awaiting him was small by collective standards, merely 12 individuals, led by a tall human male with steel-gray hair and the bearing of a military commander. He wore what Zyr'kai had learned was a uniform, though it displayed far fewer indicators of rank and achievement than equivalent collective garments.
Ambassador Zyr'kai, the man said, extending his right hand in the peculiar greeting gesture humans favored. I'm General Marcus Chen, Governor of Earth-7, and your liaison for this visit. Welcome to humanity's first purpose-built technology demonstration facility. Zyr'kai tentatively wrapped one of his smaller manipulator tentacles around the offered hand, mimicking the up-and-down motion he had observed in human greeting footage. Thank you, General Chen. The collective is most eager to establish mutually beneficial technological exchange. We have brought a comprehensive catalog of our most advanced innovations, ready for immediate transfer pending agreement on terms.
General Chen's smile remained fixed, but something flickered behind his eyes. That's very generous of you, Ambassador. Very generous indeed. But before we get into the trading part of things, we thought we'd give you a little demonstration of what Earth-7 is all about, help you understand what you're potentially getting.
That would be most appreciated.
Good. Then if you'll follow me, we'll start with the basics.
The basics, as it turned out, were anything but.
General Chen led the diplomatic party through a series of corridors carved directly into the planet's bedrock, each transition revealing new wonders that challenged Zyr'kai's understanding of what was technologically possible. They passed through a chamber where miniature stars, actual stars, burning with nuclear fusion, hovered in containment fields the size of dining tables.
They walked along a transparent bridge over a pit that seemed to extend infinitely downward, its depths flickering with lights that moved in patterns suggesting intelligence. They paused briefly at a window overlooking a factory floor where machines built other machines with no apparent biological oversight.
This is merely Earth-7, General Chen explained as they walked, our demonstration world, a place where our scientists and engineers can experiment freely without the safety restrictions we maintain on our core worlds. Safety restrictions? Zyr'kai asked faintly.
Well, sure. Some of the things we develop here are dangerous, really dangerous. The kind of dangerous where you want a few dozen light years between your experiment and your civilian population, just in case.
One of Zyr'kai's smaller tentacles had begun trembling involuntarily. And what is it that you develop here?
General Chen stopped before a massive blast door, its surface etched with warning symbols that needed no translation. Everything, Ambassador. Weapons, energy systems, transportation, computation, material science, biological enhancement, dimensional manipulation, temporal mechanics. If there's a field of technology, we've got a team somewhere on this planet trying to push it past its limits.
He pressed his hand against a scanning panel, and the door began to slowly grind open. But you wanted to see our technology, so let me ask you something first. What exactly is the collective hoping to trade for?
Zyr'kai gathered his composure, drawing on centuries of diplomatic training. The collective possesses many technologies that would benefit your species. Our medical systems can extend biological lifespans by a factor of 3. Our agricultural processors can feed 10 billion organisms from a single planetary installation. Our communication networks can transmit data instantaneously across 10,000 light-years. We offer all of this freely in exchange for Our FTL drive, General Chen finished. Yes, we know. Your initial contact package was very clear about what you wanted.
Your faster-than-light capability defies our understanding of physics. It operates on principles we cannot even theorize. To study it would advance collective science by—
Let me stop you there, Ambassador.
General Chen stepped through the now open blast door, gesturing for Zyr'kai to follow. Because I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about how humans approach these kinds of negotiations.
The chamber beyond the door was vast, a kilometer across at least, its ceiling lost in artificial mist. And filling that impossible space was something that made Zyr'kai's primary heart stop dead in his chest. It was a warship, a human warship, still under construction, its skeletal frame surrounded by hovering platforms where thousands of workers moved in coordinated choreography. The vessel was massive, larger than the collective's largest dreadnought by a factor of at least 10. Its hull bristled with protrusions that could only be weapons, each one larger than the entire Gentle Inquiry.
This is the inevitable, General Chen said quietly. Our new flagship, 5th-generation design, incorporating lessons learned from the first 4 generations we've built since making contact with your collective. You have built 5 generations of warships in 300 solar cycles? Zyr'kai's voice emerged as a strangled whisper.
5 generations of this class of warship. We've built considerably more of the smaller varieties, but that's not really the point. General Chen turned to face the ambassador directly. The point is that we don't actually need anything you're offering.
Zyr'kai felt the diplomatic ground shifting beneath him. I do not understand. Medical technology to extend lifespans? We cracked biological immortality 90 years ago. We just choose not to implement it universally because of the social implications. Agricultural processors? We developed matter replication a century before we met you. Communication systems? We can already send messages instantaneously. We just prefer to encrypt them in ways that require light-speed transmission to decrypt for security purposes.
General Chen began walking along a catwalk that ran parallel to the massive warship, and Zyr'kai found himself following despite his growing unease.
When your contact vessel arrived in our system 300 years ago, we were just barely a spacefaring species. We'd made it to our own moon, sent a few probes to neighboring planets, that sort of thing. By your standards, we were primitives, children playing with sticks while the adults built starships.
That is not an inaccurate assessment of our initial evaluation, Zyr'kai admitted.
Of course it isn't. And that evaluation made a certain kind of sense. You'd spent 12,000 years building your civilization, mastering the technologies that now seem like fundamental aspects of reality. You'd encountered hundreds of other species along the way, and almost all of them followed the same pattern. Slow, gradual development, each species eventually reaching the same technological plateau that the collective had reached millennia ago.
They had reached a viewing platform that overlooked the warship's primary drive section. Even inactive, the machinery hummed with barely contained power.
But here's the thing about humans, Ambassador. We don't do things gradually. We don't approach problems with patience and careful deliberation. When we see something we want, when we identify a goal worth pursuing, we throw everything we have at it. We sacrifice sleep, sanity, safety, whatever it takes. We break things, we fail spectacularly, we get back up and try again, and again, and again.
This is not efficient, Zyr'kai managed.
No, it isn't. It's wasteful, dangerous, and frequently counterproductive. But it's also fast. Incredibly, impossibly fast by your standards. General Chen leaned against the railing, his gaze fixed on the warship below. When your contact vessel shared the collective's technological database with us, a gesture meant to help us catch up to galactic standards over the next few thousand years, we took it as a challenge, a starting point, a puzzle to be solved.
A puzzle? Every technology in that database represented the culmination of the collective's understanding, the best solutions your 12,000 years of development had produced. But solutions to what? That's what our scientists wanted to know. What were the underlying problems that these technologies solved? And once we understood the problems, could we find better solutions?
Zethryx's secondary heart had begun pounding in an erratic rhythm. You reverse-engineered our entire technological base?
Reversed engineered it, analyzed it, improved it, and in most cases replaced it entirely with something new. General Chen smiled, and for the first time, Zethryx understood that the expression was not friendly at all. Your faster-than-light drive, for example, the one you want so badly. Do you know why you can't figure out how it works?
Our theoretical physicists have proposed numerous hypotheses. It works because we wanted it to work. That's the fundamental principle. Human willpower, channeled through a quantum consciousness interface, can alter the probability matrix of localized spacetime. We didn't discover faster-than-light travel, Ambassador. We invented it. We imagined a universe where the light-speed barrier was permeable, and then we made that imagination real.
For a long moment, Zethryx could not speak. The implications of what General Chen was describing were staggering. If true, it meant that humans did not simply use technology, they willed it into existence. They reshaped reality itself according to their desires.
That is... Zethryx searched for words. That is not possible. And yet, here we are. General Chen pushed off from the railing and resumed walking. Come on, Ambassador. The warship is just the appetizer. Let me show you what we've been working on for the main course.
The next several hours blurred together in Zethryx's memory, a cascade of impossibilities that his mind struggled to process. He saw laboratories where scientists casually manipulated the fundamental forces of the universe, tweaking gravity and electromagnetism like a child adjusting the settings on a toy.
He saw workshops where engineers crafted materials that existed in states his language had no words for, substances that were simultaneously solid and liquid, matter and energy, real and imaginary. He saw training facilities where human soldiers learned to interface directly with combat machines.
And through it all, General Chen narrated with the casual confidence of someone showing off a particularly impressive garden.
We're still working on the dimensional folding for the new transport system. Right now, we can only reliably create stable pocket dimensions up to about a cubic kilometer. The goal is to eventually carry entire planets in portable containment fields.
This defense grid uses controlled microsingularities to create an impenetrable barrier around any protected asset. We've tested it against everything up to and including stellar core level energy releases. The new biological enhancement package increases human baseline strength, speed, and durability by a factor of 20. We're hoping to push that to 50 within the next decade.
By the time they reached the final demonstration chamber, Zethryx had abandoned any pretense of diplomatic composure. He simply drifted alongside General Chen, his tentacles limp, his 7 eyes unfocused, his mind reeling from the accumulated weight of what he had witnessed.
This last one is my personal favorite, General Chen said, keying open a final door. We call it the Oracle Engine. The chamber beyond was unexpectedly small, barely 20 meters across. In its center sat a simple metal chair, surrounded by a ring of softly glowing crystals. A young human woman sat in the chair, her eyes closed, her expression peaceful.
This is Dr. Sarah Vance, General Chen said. She's the most powerful precognitive our species has ever produced. The Oracle Engine amplifies her natural abilities by a factor of approximately 10,000.
Precognitive? Zethryx asked weakly. She sees the future. All possible futures, actually. Every potential outcome of every decision, branching out across probability space like an infinite tree. With the engine's help, she can navigate that tree, identify the pathways we want, and provide guidance on how to reach them.
Dr. Vance opened her eyes and smiled at the ambassador. "Hello, Zyr'kai. I've been expecting you. Literally, in this case."
You knew we were coming?
I knew about this meeting 4 years ago when the collective first detected our FTL signatures and decided to send a diplomatic mission. I knew about the technologies you would offer, the terms you would propose, and the underlying strategic calculations that drove your council's decisions.
Zyr'kai's tentacles began trembling again. That information was classified at the highest levels.
Classification doesn't mean much when you can see directly into the future, Ambassador. I know why you're really here, what the collective is really afraid of.
General Chen stepped forward, his smile widening. Why don't you explain it to him, Sarah? I think the ambassador deserves to understand the full picture.
Dr. Vance nodded, her gaze never leaving Zyr'kai. The collective has dominated galactic civilization for 12,000 years. During that time, you've encountered hundreds of other species, and every single one of them has followed the same pattern. They develop gradually, they eventually reach your level, and they integrate peacefully into your existing power structure. It's a stable, predictable system. It's worked well. But then you found us, she continued. A species that doesn't fit the pattern. A species that went from chemical rockets to reality manipulation in 3 centuries. A species that shows no signs of slowing down, no signs of reaching a plateau, no signs of wanting to integrate into your existing order.
The collective does not, Zyr'kai began.
The collective is terrified, Dr. Vance interrupted gently. Your analysts have run the projections. If human technological development continues at its current rate, we will surpass the collective's total capabilities within 80 years. Within 200, we will be so far beyond you that any conflict would be utterly one-sided. And within 500 years,
She paused, and for a moment, something vast and unknowable flickered behind her eyes.
Within 500 years, we will have transcended the limitations of physical existence entirely. We will have become something new, something the galaxy has never seen before, something that frightens your council more than anything they have ever encountered.
Zyr'kai found his voice, though it emerged as barely a whisper. Then why are we here? Why allow this diplomatic mission if you already know?
Because we want you to understand, General Chen said. We want you to go back to your council and explain what you've seen. We want them to understand that this technological exchange they proposed was never going to work. You can't trade for what we have, Ambassador. You can't buy it, steal it, or reverse engineer it. Our technology isn't just machinery and physics. It's an expression of what we are as a species.
It's built from human creativity, human determination, human willingness to break the rules of the universe when those rules get in our way. He stepped closer to Zyr'kai, close enough that the ambassador could see the patterns of color in his eyes, the subtle marks of age on his skin. We're not here to join your collective, Ambassador. We're not here to be managed or contained or guided towards some predetermined plateau. We're going to keep growing, keep pushing, keep transforming ourselves and the universe around us, and there's nothing you can do to stop us.
But, Dr. Vance added, rising from her chair, there's also nothing to fear, at least not from us. Zyr'kai turned his attention to the precognitive, desperate for any hint of hope. What do you mean?
I see the futures, Ambassador. All of them. And in the ones where the collective tries to oppose us, where your council decides that humanity must be contained, constrained, or eliminated, the outcomes are uniformly terrible. Not just for your species, for everyone. The galaxy tears itself apart in wars that last millennia. Entire civilizations are extinguished. The light of intelligence nearly vanishes from this corner of the universe.
She moved closer, her voice softening.
But in the futures where you choose understanding instead of fear, where you accept that humanity is different, not dangerous, those futures are beautiful, Ambassador. They're full of wonders that neither of our species can currently imagine. They're full of growth and discovery and transformation that benefits everyone. They're the futures we want to build.
And we will build them, General Chen said firmly. With you or without you. That's your choice and the choice of your council. But this demonstration, everything you've seen today, is meant to help you make that choice from a position of knowledge rather than ignorance.
Zethric spent several long moments in silence, processing everything he had witnessed and heard. His diplomatic training, honed over centuries, told him to probe for weaknesses, to search for leverage points, to find ways to turn this situation to the collective's advantage.
But another part of him, a deeper, older part that remembered what it felt like to be a young Zethric, full of wonder at the vastness of the universe, recognized something in these humans. They reminded him of something the collective had lost long ago in their slow march toward perfection and stability. They reminded him of hunger, of ambition, of the willingness to risk everything for the chance at something more. "I will convey your message to the Council," he said finally. "I cannot guarantee how they will respond."
You don't have to guarantee anything, Dr. Vance said, smiling. I've already seen how this conversation ends. You're going to make the right argument, Ambassador. You're going to help them understand. It will take time, decades probably, but eventually the collective will choose understanding. They'll choose to grow alongside us rather than standing in our way.
You have seen this future? I've seen many futures, but the one where you give the speech that changes everything, that's the one I'm betting on.
General Chen extended his hand once more. "Safe travels, Ambassador. I hope the next time we meet, it will be as allies." Zethric wrapped his tentacle around the offered hand, feeling the warmth and strength in the human's grip. "I hope so as well, General, though I suspect hope may be an insufficient word for what I am feeling."
Terror and wonder mixed together until you can't tell them apart anymore? General Chen grinned. Yeah, that's a pretty common reaction. We call it meeting humans.
The journey back to collective space took 3 standard months, and Zethric spent nearly every moment of it preparing his report. He organized the sensor data, cataloged his observations, and carefully crafted the arguments he would present to the Council. But underneath all of that preparation, he found himself returning again and again to a single question.
What did it mean to be a species without limits?
The collective had spent 12,000 years building their civilization on the foundation of understood principles. They had mapped the boundaries of physics, cataloged the possibilities of chemistry, charted the territories of mathematics. Their technology was the product of that understanding, powerful, reliable, refined to near perfection within the constraints of what was possible. But the humans seemed to operate on a different set of assumptions entirely. They didn't accept constraints. They didn't acknowledge boundaries. When they encountered a limitation, they didn't work within it. They broke through it, shattered it, remade it into something that served their purposes.
It was terrifying. It was awe-inspiring. It was, Zethric realized, exactly what the collective had been missing. He thought about the early days of collective civilization, back before they had encountered other species, before they had developed the stability protocols that now governed every aspect of their society. In those days, the ancestors of his people had been explorers, risk-takers, dreamers willing to sacrifice everything for the chance at discovery. They had pushed boundaries too, once upon a time.
But somewhere along the way, the pushing had stopped. The collective had reached a level of development they considered sufficient, and they had focused their energies on maintaining what they had built, rather than reaching for what might come next. Stability had become their highest virtue, change their greatest fear. The humans were a mirror, reflecting back an image of what the collective had chosen not to become, and that image was uncomfortable, because it raised the question of whether the collective's choice had been the right one.
When the gentle inquiry finally arrived at the collective capital world, Zyr'kai requested an immediate audience with the full council. Given the importance of the human situation, his request was granted within hours.
The council chamber was ancient, its walls carved from crystallized starlight harvested from a supernova that had detonated before the ancestors of the collective had developed writing. 11 council members floated in their respective meditation spheres, their combined telepathic presence creating a field of shared consciousness that would ensure perfect transmission of Zyr'kai's report.
Ambassador Zyr'kai, intoned the Prime Counselor, her voice resonating through both sound and thought. You have returned from your mission to the human colonial world. Share your findings with the Council. Zyr'kai activated his personal recording devices, projecting holographic images of everything he had witnessed. As the displays flickered to life, showing the impossible warship, the reality-bending laboratories, the Oracle engine and its precognitive operator, he felt the collective attention of the Council focusing with an intensity that bordered on physical pressure. He narrated his experiences as objectively as possible, describing the technologies, the conversations, the demonstrations. He presented the humans' message exactly as they had delivered it. We are not here to join you. We will not stop growing, and you cannot prevent our ascension. When he finished, the council chamber fell silent. The holographic displays faded, leaving only the soft glow of the crystallized walls. For a long moment, none of the council members spoke, their thoughts carefully shielded even from each other. Finally, the Prime Counselor broke the silence. Ambassador Zyr'kai, you have shown us what the humans possess. You have transmitted their message of warning, but you have not yet offered your own assessment. What is your recommendation? Zyr'kai had prepared for this question. He had rehearsed his answer 100 times during the journey home. But now, floating in the ancient chamber before the most powerful beings in the collective, he found that all of his careful preparations seemed inadequate. Honorable Council, he began, I have served as a diplomat for 347 standard years. During that time, I have negotiated with 62 different species, resolved 17 major territorial disputes, and facilitated the peaceful integration of 9 new civilizations into the collective. I say this not to boast of my accomplishments, but to establish my credentials as an observer of alien cultures. He paused, gathering his thoughts. In all of those years, across all of those encounters, I have never experienced anything like my visit to Earth 7. The humans are not merely advanced, they are different in a fundamental way that our existing analytical frameworks cannot adequately capture. Their technology operates on principles we cannot replicate, because those principles are not merely physical laws. They are expressions of something we do not possess, a willingness to reject the boundaries of reality itself.
The council members remained silent, their attention unwavering.
I believe, Zyr'kai continued slowly, that we are facing a choice that will determine the future of our civilization. We can view the humans as a threat, an emerging power that will inevitably challenge our dominance and must therefore be contained or eliminated before they grow too strong. Or we can view them as an opportunity, a catalyst for our own transformation, a chance to rediscover the ambition and creativity that we abandoned millennia ago in favor of stability. The first path leads to conflict. The humans showed me their capabilities not to threaten us, but to demonstrate that conflict would be futile. Even if we committed every resource we possess to opposing them, we would fail. They are already too advanced, too innovative, too adaptive. By the time we could organize a meaningful resistance, they would have progressed beyond our ability to challenge.
The second path leads to uncertainty. If we choose understanding instead of fear, if we accept that humanity represents something genuinely new, then we must also accept that the future will not conform to our predictions. We will have to learn, to adapt, to change ourselves in ways we cannot currently anticipate. It will be uncomfortable. It will be destabilizing. It will require us to abandon many of the assumptions that have governed our civilization since its founding.
Zyr'kai drew himself up, all 7 of his eyes meeting the gaze of the Prime Counselor directly.
But I believe that path is also the only one that leads to survival, not merely as a species, but as a civilization worthy of the name. The humans have reminded me of something I had forgotten, that growth is not just a means to an end, but an end in itself. That the purpose of existence is not to achieve stability, but to continuously become something greater than what we were before.
My recommendation, Honorable Council, is that we embrace this reminder, that we seek not to contain the humans, but to learn from them, that we allow their fire to reignite the spark that once drove our own ancestors toward greatness.
He bowed his head, his tentacles curling in the traditional gesture of deference. That is my assessment. The final decision, of course, rests with this council.
The debate that followed lasted for 18 standard days.
Factions formed and dissolved. Arguments were made and countered. Simulations were run and analyzed. Some council members advocated for immediate military action, insisting that the humans represented an existential threat that could not be tolerated. Others proposed more subtle approaches: economic pressure, diplomatic isolation, covert sabotage of human development programs.
But throughout the debate, Zyr'kai's words echoed in the minds of the participants. Growth is not just a means to an end. The purpose of existence is not to achieve stability.
And slowly, hesitantly, the balance of opinion began to shift.
The turning point came on the 15th day, when Councillor Vekthari, the oldest and most respected member of the body, requested permission to speak. She had been silent throughout the previous debates, her ancient eyes watching and evaluating without offering opinion.
"Honored colleagues," she began, her voice carrying the weight of 3,000 years of accumulated wisdom, "I have listened to every argument presented in this chamber. I have reviewed the ambassador's recordings, studied the sensor data, analyzed the technological demonstrations, and I have reached a conclusion that I suspect will surprise many of you."
She paused, her bioluminescent patches flickering in a pattern that indicated deep emotion.
"We are dinosaurs."
A ripple of confusion passed through the council. The metaphor was unfamiliar. Vekthari had been accessing the human cultural database, apparently. "I use the term deliberately," she continued. "In human history, there was a period when massive creatures called dinosaurs dominated their planet. They were the apex predators, the undisputed masters of their world. They had achieved stability, a sustainable equilibrium that lasted for millions of their years. Then a catastrophic event occurred, and the dinosaurs vanished. But the smaller, more adaptable creatures survived. They evolved, transformed, eventually gave rise to the very humans we are now discussing." Vekthari's gaze swept across the council chamber. "We are the dinosaurs, colleagues. We have achieved our stable equilibrium. We have dominated our environment for 12,000 years. But now a new force has emerged, smaller, faster, more adaptable. And we face the same choice that the dinosaurs never got to make: evolve or perish." Ambassador Zyr'kai is right. The humans cannot be stopped by force. Any attempt to contain them will only accelerate our own obsolescence. Our only hope, our only rational strategy, is to learn from them, to allow their energy and creativity to catalyze our own transformation. She bowed her head, her patches dimming to almost nothing. "I have lived for 3,000 years, and I have seen our civilization slowly calcify into something that prizes preservation over progress. I had accepted this as inevitable, as the natural fate of any sufficiently advanced culture. But the humans have shown me that this acceptance was a choice, not a law of nature. We chose to stop growing. We can choose to start again."
I vote for understanding. I vote for evolution. I vote for embracing the chaos that the humans represent, because the alternative is to become fossils in a galaxy that has moved beyond us.
After Methrix's speech, the remaining debate was almost anticlimactic. One by one, the council members declared their positions, and when the final tally was counted, the result was clear: 8 votes for understanding, 3 for opposition.
The Prime Counselor rose, her sphere ascending to the center of the chamber. The Council has spoken. The collective will pursue a policy of engagement with humanity, seeking to learn from their innovations rather than opposing their development. Ambassador Zyr'kai, you are hereby appointed Special Envoy to Human Space, with full authority to negotiate the terms of this engagement.
Zyr'kai accepted the appointment with a mix of pride and trepidation. He knew that the path ahead would not be easy. The collective had spent millennia resisting change, and cultural inertia would not vanish simply because the council had voted. There would be resistance, resentment, and fear. There would be those who saw humanity not as teachers, but as usurpers.
But there would also be those who remembered what it felt like to dream of impossible things, and who were willing to dream again.
The next 50 years were a period of unprecedented transformation for the collective. Human advisors arrived on collective worlds, sharing not just their technology, but their philosophy of relentless innovation. Collective scientists began working alongside human researchers, learning to approach problems with a creativity that their training had previously discouraged. Young collective citizens studied at human universities, returning home with ideas that challenged every assumption their elders held dear. It was not a smooth process. There were conflicts, misunderstandings, and moments when the entire project seemed on the verge of collapse. Some collective worlds refused to participate, clinging to traditional ways, and eventually finding themselves left behind as the rest of the civilization evolved. Some humans grew impatient with the slow pace of collective adaptation, dismissing their alien partners as hopelessly conservative.
But through it all, the essential dynamic remained. The humans pushed, and the collective learned to push back. Each challenge forced growth. Each conflict sparked innovation. Each moment of tension became an opportunity for transformation.
Zyr'kai watched it all unfold from his position as Special Envoy, serving as a bridge between the two civilizations. He saw the collective develop new technologies that combined their 12,000 years of refinement with humanity's reality-bending creativity. He saw new forms of art, philosophy, and governance emerge from the fusion of two radically different cultures. He saw the galaxy begin to change in ways that no one could have predicted.
And through it all, he remembered that moment in the demonstration chamber on Earth 7, when General Chen had first shown him the warship, and Dr. Vance had explained what the humans truly wanted.
They had wanted partners, not subjects, not competitors, but genuine partners in the grand project of pushing the boundaries of what was possible. They had seen something in the collective that the collective had forgotten was there, a capacity for growth that had been dormant for millennia, waiting for the right catalyst to awaken it.
The demonstration had never been about intimidation. It had been about inspiration.
100 years after Zyr'kai's first visit to Earth 7, the collective and humanity jointly established the Convergence Institute, a massive research facility located at the gravitational balance point between the two civilizations' territories. It was designed as a permanent site for collaborative innovation, a place where the best minds of both species could work together on projects that neither could accomplish alone. Zyr'kai, now ancient even by collective standards, was invited to deliver the opening address at the Institute's dedication ceremony. He floated before a crowd of thousands, collective citizens and humans intermingled, their physical differences seeming almost trivial after a century of cooperation.
"I remember," he began, "the first time I saw human technology. I was terrified. I was awed. I could not understand how a species so young could have accomplished so much, so quickly. I questioned whether my people had any future in a galaxy where such beings existed.
He paused, his 7 eyes sweeping across the assembled crowd.
I was asking the wrong question. The right question was not whether the collective could survive alongside humanity. It was whether we were willing to grow alongside them, whether we could remember what our ancestors knew, that existence is not about preserving what we have, but about reaching for what we might become.
Today, we open this institute as a testament to what happens when two civilizations choose growth over fear. Not fusion, we remain distinct with our own histories and traditions and ways of being, but partnership, collaboration, a shared commitment to pushing beyond every boundary we encounter.
The humans showed us their technology a century ago. They gave us a demonstration of what they could accomplish. But the real demonstration, the one that matters, is what we have accomplished together since then, and what we will accomplish in the centuries to come.
He turned slightly, gesturing toward the massive complex behind him, its architecture a seamless blend of collective crystalline aesthetics and human industrial functionalism.
Welcome to the future. It belongs to all of us.
The applause that followed echoed across light years, carried by communication systems that had not existed when Zyr'kai first made contact with humanity. In laboratories throughout the galaxy, researchers heard the broadcast and returned to their work with renewed energy. On colonial worlds, young beings of every species looked up at the stars and dreamed of what they might discover.
And on Earth 7, now transformed from a demonstration facility into a thriving center of multi-species collaboration, General Marcus Chen, long dead but preserved as a holographic memorial, seemed to smile at the visitors who came to learn about the early days of human collective relations.
They wanted our technology, his recorded voice would say to each new group of visitors. They got a demonstration instead. But the real lesson wasn't about what we had, it was about what we all could become, together.
The visitors would nod, take their commemorative recordings, and return to their lives. But a few of them, the curious ones, the hungry ones, the ones who felt something stir inside them when they looked at the impossible things humans had built, those few would pause at the exit and ask a question.
How do we become like that? How do we learn to break the rules of reality? And the facility's AI, designed by the combined efforts of collective and human engineers, would always give the same answer. You start by deciding that the rules are wrong. Everything else follows from there.
It was a very human answer. But then again, after 100 years of partnership, human had become less a description of a single species and more a philosophy that anyone could adopt.
The demonstration had succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. It had shown the galaxy not just what humans could do, but what everyone could become, if they were willing to want it badly enough.
And in the end, wanting it badly enough turned out to be the most powerful technology of all. Counselor Methrix died peacefully in her meditation sphere 300 years after her pivotal speech to the Council. She had lived long enough to see the collective transform from a static civilization into something dynamic, growing, alive with possibilities that would have seemed like fantasy in her youth.
At her memorial service, Ambassador Zyr'kai, the last surviving member of the original diplomatic mission to Earth 7, spoke of her courage in choosing evolution over extinction.
She understood something that many of us had forgotten, he said. Change is not a threat to be managed. It is the fundamental nature of existence. We can resist it and eventually be swept away by it, or we can embrace it and ride it toward destinations we cannot yet imagine. Counselor Methrix chose to embrace it, and in doing so, she gave our entire civilization a second chance at greatness.
After the ceremony, Zyr'kai retreated to his private quarters and activated a communication link that connected him to the one being in the galaxy he most wanted to speak with.
Dr. Sarah Vance, the precognitive who had foreseen this future centuries ago, appeared as a holographic projection. She was impossibly old now, her body sustained by technologies that blurred the line between biology and machinery, but her eyes still held the same knowing gleam that Zethryx remembered from their first meeting.
"You called," she said. "I was wondering when you would."
You knew I would call? I know when everyone calls, Ambassador. It's kind of my thing. She smiled, and despite her age, the expression still carried warmth. You want to know if it was worth it, if all the pain of transformation was justified by the outcome.
Zethryx bowed his head. The counselor died believing that it was, but she was always more optimistic than I am. I find myself uncertain.
Uncertainty is appropriate, Dr. Vance said. The future isn't fixed, Ambassador. It never was. All I could ever see were possibilities, branches of probability that might or might not manifest, depending on the choices people made. Then how did you know? How did you know that this would be the right path?
Dr. Vance was silent for a moment. I didn't know, she finally admitted. I believed. I looked at all the possible futures, and I chose to believe in the ones where growth led to something beautiful rather than something terrible. And then I did everything in my power to make those futures real.
That seems like a very human approach.
It is, but it's also the only approach that works, Ambassador. The universe doesn't come with guarantees. It doesn't reward caution or punish risk. It just exists, waiting for someone to decide what it should become.
She leaned forward, her holographic image flickering slightly. Your species learned that lesson over the past 3 centuries. You learned to stop waiting for certainty and start creating possibilities. That's why the collective is thriving. That's why the future looks brighter now than it did when we first met.
But there will always be uncertainty?
Always. Forever. It's the price of existence. Dr. Vance smiled again. But here's the secret, Ambassador. The uncertainty isn't a bug. It's a feature. It's what makes growth possible. It's what makes meaning possible. Without uncertainty, the universe would be nothing but an endless repetition of predictable outcomes. And what would be the point of that?
Zethryx considered her words carefully. After 3 centuries of partnership with humanity, he had learned to appreciate their unconventional wisdom, even when it challenged his deepest assumptions.
Thank you, Dr. Vance. I believe I understand.
I know you do, she winked. Precognition, remember? Now go get some rest, Ambassador. You have a long day tomorrow.
I do.
You're going to give the keynote speech at the Convergence Institute's tricentennial celebration, and you're going to say something that inspires an entire generation of researchers to push beyond everything we've accomplished so far.
Zethryx felt a flutter of something that might have been excitement. What am I going to say?
That would be telling. Dr. Vance's image began to fade. But I'll give you a hint. It starts with gratitude and ends with a challenge. The good speeches always do.
She vanished, leaving Zethryx alone with his thoughts.
He floated in the darkness of his quarters, contemplating the strange journey that had brought him from skeptical diplomat to elder statesman of a transformed civilization. 3 centuries ago, he had been sent to acquire technology from a species that his people considered primitive. Instead, he had received a demonstration that changed everything.
The humans had shown him what was possible, and then they had helped him, helped all of them, make that possibility real. Tomorrow, he would stand before thousands and offer his own demonstration, not of technology, but of understanding. He would speak of growth, of change, of the courage required to embrace uncertainty. He would challenge his audience to push beyond what they had accomplished and reach for what they had not yet imagined.
It was, he reflected, a very human thing to do. But then again, after 300 years, human had become less a description and more a way of being.
And that, perhaps, was the greatest technology of all.